All right, let's talk about the ups and downs of Hades 2. I gotta admit, this is one of those games that I'm not even really sure how. I haven't really even decided how I feel about it because I've been so engrossed in the game that I haven't really paid much attention to like thinking about how much I like it because I've just been enjoying it so much. I guess the best lens to look through it at is compared to the first game. So the first game was one of my favorite roguelikes ever. I mean, I think it's objectively one of the best roguelikes ever. This game is very similar. My first impression of this was that it's just more Hades, which is not a bad thing, but it scratched such a similar itch that while it does innovate in a bunch of different ways, it's essentially at its core just more Hades, and so it didn't feel as novel to me at first. I think that's still true to a degree. However, later in the game, when you get into some of the different kinds of permutations of the later runs, there's some added intricacy there without spoiling anything that that the first game didn't have, and it did make things a little bit more interesting. It mixed things up. In the first game, and I will spoil the first game a little bit, so you got 3 seconds to jet if you don't want that. But in the first game, you kill Hades, and then you just kill him over and over and over again, and you get some more dialogue, but the runs are very similar, and they get pretty stale. This game, there's more intricacy than that. You're doing multiple different kinds of things, and it never got old like the first game did. Now, I will say that the first game, one of the things that I like more about the first game is that not only is it more novel, but it was also harder for me. This game was pretty challenging for the first 20 runs or so, but once I had done the complete run, I have to be a little careful here. Once I had completed the run a couple of times, suddenly it was a cakewalk. This game definitely has a downhill slope that I had heard the first game had. I had a lot of people tell me, oh, the last 5 times you kill Hades, it's a breeze. That was not the case for me. Even after killing him 4, 5, 6 times, I still really had to focus in order to beat Hades at the end. In this game, I did not. Once I'd had a couple of victories under my belt, I wasn't even really thinking. I was autopiloting the last 14, well, no, maybe not 14, but the last 10 runs, I was just autopiloting it. So it's very, very easy toward the end. A little too easy, I think. Some of the builds are so overpowered and broken once you start figuring out how to put them together that you can just melt everything that you touch. So, and that, again, is somewhat true in the first game, but I feel like it's more true in this one, and I think the game would have been better if it hadn't been so much of this game is like a very steep uphill climb and then a very steep downhill run. Hades to me was more gradual up and more gradual down, and I think I prefer that. When it comes to the story, the artwork, the voice acting, all those kinds of aspects, both games are absolute god tier. I don't know if I'd have a favorite. They're both perfect in that respect. When it comes to the acting, the writing, the art, the story, all that stuff, absolutely fantastic in both cases. I really don't. I think maybe I might slightly prefer this one, again, because there's a little bit more intricacy in the later runs. But they're both just some of the best writing and acting in any game. Usually still portraits while people are talking have a tendency to bore me. Not in this game. No, I was never bored by any of the story stuff. In the first game, I tried all the weapons once, and then I almost immediately liked the spear more than any other weapon, and I just used the spear for the whole game. In this game, it was a little bit different, and I think better. At first, I didn't like any of the weapons, though, and so I was afraid at first that I wasn't going to like the weapon variety at all in this game. I really struggled with all of the weapons at first. But then there was a period where I kind of liked all the weapons, and so I was alternating through them. Eventually, in the last dozen runs, I ended up deciding I'm just going to stick with this weapon for the rest of the game because I think it's my favorite, and that's what I did. But I think overall, that was a better experience to me than in the first game. Almost everyone I've talked to about the first Hades game has said, "Oh, I use this weapon, and that's my favorite weapon. Maybe this one's a distant second, but I have a clear favorite, and I have a strong preference." I haven't talked to anyone about this game yet, but I would not be surprised if people were more interested in rotating through the weapons, because they're a lot more, in my opinion, they're a lot more diverse and a little bit more interesting. I didn't love the way they did the casts in this game. There wasn't a ton of variety with the casts. I didn't like that. I think the game could have been better if the weapons affected the cast, or if you had boons that made the casts more different than they were, like in the first game. All the casts in this game were too similar for me. But the attacks and special variety was very good. I think probably better than the first game. All in all, I think this is a game of the year contender. I haven't thought about where I'm going to rank it yet, but I mean it's going to be up there, top 5 for sure. Maybe top 3. I don't know. I'll have to give it some thought. As far as whether I like this game or the first one more, that's a really tough question. I'm leaning towards this one mostly because of the weapon variety, move variety, and because the late game stuff is a lot more engaging to me. But I did like that the first one was just a lot more novel. This game does at its core feel like more Hades, and so because of that, some of the novelty is not really there. It's not as impressive in that way. It's like when playing Hades 1 for the first time, it's like every time you see the new artwork of a new character, you get a line of dialogue, everything is new, everything is novel, every weapon that you unlock. And this game, you're kind of just, if you've played the first one, you're kind of go through those paces, and there's not a lot of surprises. There are some, but there aren't as many as when you're playing the first game for the first time. So just because the first one came out first, it's got some novelty that this one doesn't have. But when it comes to roguelikes, there's nothing better. Well, there are 2 roguelikes that come to mind that I actually think I do prefer over both of these Hades games. And they're probably, most people would disagree with me, but I really love Returnal. Really love Returnal. That's one of my favorite games ever. And there's a little roguelike called Dreamscaper that not a lot of people have played that I absolutely adore. I don't know if I would rank this over that. But those are not popular opinions, so you don't have to take those seriously. All in all, this game was an absolute blast. I don't know how many hours. I probably put, I don't even know, at least 40 hours into this, and it at no point was it a slog. It was engaging from start to finish. So I one of the best roguelikes of all time, and one of the best games of the year for sure. All right, we did it. Last order of business, Hades 2. It has been fun, but we had a great time with you, and I really appreciate all the hard work that the developers put into this. But we are now going to delete you from our console and never play you again. Bye! Appreciate ya. What a great job you did.